When you research stablecoins today, you get a lot of misleading information. And that's what we're here to clarify today. In this video, we're going to teach you everything you need to know about stablecoins. But actually, what are stablecoins, why we care, categories and properties, designs of top stablecoins, and then the real reason behind what they do, what stablecoins really do. This video is for both everybody technical and non-technical. And we're going to correct a lot of the misleading information out there. There's going to be a lot of information here for people less familiar with DeFi. So as always, don't be discouraged if something doesn't make sense the first time you hear it. Buckle up.
Buckle up, dum-dum.
We're in for a volatile ride about stability. A stablecoin is a non-volatile crypto asset. That's it. Fleshed out, we could rephrase it to a stablecoin is a crypto asset whose buying power fluctuates very little relative to the rest of the market. And this is the first place where we disagree with traditional media. If you Google, what is a stablecoin, you'll see something like this response everywhere. Stablecoins are cryptocurrencies, the value of which is pegged or tied to that of another currency, commodity, or financial instrument. And to that, I disagree. I think that's an easy initial way to understand them, but not the whole story. A stablecoin is a crypto asset whose buying power stays relatively stable. A good example of buying power would be an apple market. If you went to a market to buy apples with Bitcoin 6 months ago, the number of apples you could buy would be drastically different than the number of apples you could buy today. That's an example of buying power changing and not being very stable. However, someone buying apples with dollars would probably be able to buy the same amount of apples 6 months ago to now. That's an example of buying power staying relatively the same. Since we could buy the same amount of apples today than 6 months ago, a dollar would be considered a more stable asset, whereas Bitcoin would be much less stable. This is what we mean by buying power. An asset whose price fluctuates rapidly all the time is a poor example of stable buying power.
Oh, it went to zero! Yeah!
This, for example, would not be a stable asset. Now, a stable crypto asset is just a stable asset that's a cryptocurrency. Most cryptocurrencies, by nature, aren't stable, but we will give examples of stablecoins. So summary here, a stablecoin is a crypto asset whose buying power stays relatively the same. And if that's all you take from this video, perfect, great. Let's keep going. Now, why do we care about stablecoins? Because money is important. But not like, I love money type of important. In everyday society, we need some type of low volatility, aka stable currency to fulfill the three functions of money. And for Web3, we need a crypto version of this. The three functions of money are storage of value, unit of account, and medium of exchange. Storage of value is a way for us to keep the value and wealth we've generated. Putting dollars in your bank account or buying stocks / cryptocurrencies is a good example of storing your value. Apples would make for a poor storage of value since they would rot over time and lose their value. Unit of account is a way to measure how valuable something is. When you go shopping, you see prices being listed in terms of dollars. This is an example of the dollar being used as a unit of account. Pricing something in Bitcoin would be a poor unit of account, since the prices would change all the time. Medium of exchange is an agreed upon method to transact with each other. Buying groceries with dollars is a good example of using dollars as a medium of exchange. Buying groceries with car tires would make for a poor medium of exchange, since car tires are hard to transact with. In order for our everyday lives to be efficient, we need money to do all these three things. And like I said, in Web3, we need a Web3 money. We need to be able to know the value of stuff in Web3, to be able to pay for things without prices going crazy, and we need to be able to store our wealth in Web3. In a decentralized world, we need a decentralized money. Assets like Ethereum work great as a storage of value and medium of exchange, but fall a little bit on their unit of account due to their buying power volatility. However, maybe in the future, as Ethereum becomes more adopted, it'll become stable and we won't even need stablecoins. But right now, it's a little too volatile. And yet, I'll still tell you it's ultrasound money, since I do think it's an amazing store of value, but that's a conversation for another time. Bankless, don't kill me. I'd love your content. Also, if you're here, be sure to like and subscribe because we're just cooking the fire up and we are about to pop off. Anyways, okay, so now we know what a stablecoin is, why we care. Let's talk about the different categories of stablecoins. And here is the second place I strongly disagree with traditional media. If you search for types of stablecoins, you'll get something that pulls them into categories like this: fiat collateralized, crypto collateralized, commodity collateralized, and then algorithmic. Now, this isn't too bad of a categorization. It does make it easier for new people to understand, but I think it paints an inaccurate picture. So let's categorize stablecoins. But actually, the categorizations that I like are relative stability, stability method, and collateral type. So what are these categorizations? Let's start with relative stability. When we talk about stability, something is stable only relative to something else. The most popular type of stablecoins is pegging or anchored stablecoins. And these are stablecoins that are pegged or anchored to another asset, like the US dollar. Tether, DAI, and USDC are all examples of US dollar pegged stablecoins. They follow the narrative of one of these coins equals $1. And that's how they stay stable. It's stable because they track the price of another asset that we think is stable. And most of these stablecoins have some type of mechanism to make them almost interchangeable with their pegged asset. For example, USDC says that for every USDC token printed or minted, there is a dollar or a bunch of assets that equal a dollar in some bank account somewhere. So the way it keeps its value is that at any time, you should be able to swap your USDC for the dollar, or at least hypothetically so. Something like DAI, on the other hand, uses a permissionless over-collateralization to maintain its peg, but we'll get to understanding that a little later. However, a stablecoin doesn't have to be pegged to another asset. It can be floating. Remember, to be considered a stablecoin, its buying power just has to stay relatively the same over time. So a floating stablecoin is floating because its buying power stays the same and it's not tied down to any other asset. With this mechanism, you could hypothetically have a stablecoin that's even more stable than an anchored or pegged stablecoin. Let's look at an example. Let's say I can buy 10 apples for $10 today, but in 5 years, I can only buy 5 apples with $10. So it would cost me $20 to buy 10 apples. This isn't an unheard of phenomenon to happen, and is commonly just referred to as inflation. Now let's introduce a stablecoin whose buying power floats up and down with the market. For now, let's just pretend it does so magically, and let's call it Apple Coin. Today, you can buy 10 apples with 10 Apple Coins, and in 10 years, you can also buy 10 apples with 10 Apple Coins. Which one of these assets would you say is more stable? Yes, the Apple Coin's buying power stayed the same over the 5-year period. So we'd say it's a more stable asset, even though it's not pegged to something like a dollar. And yes, stablecoins like this do exist, and they use a lot of clever algorithms to do this. One such example is the Rye stablecoin by Reflexor Labs. How Rye works might be its own video, but we've left some links in the description for you if you want to learn more about how it works. Because this concept can be a little hard to grasp, to further explain it, let's go through another analogy. Let's look at the anchor and the buoy in this image. Which of these do you think is more stable? The anchor or the buoy? Well, it depends on what you're comparing them to. Compared to sea level, the buoy is more stable, since it'll always be at sea level. As the water level rises and falls, the distance between the anchor and the sea level is constantly changing. The buoy is an example of a floating stablecoin. Now, if we compare these two to the ocean floor though, the anchor is more stable of the two, since it'll always be right on the ocean floor. This is analogous to a pegged/anchored stablecoin. Now, if we're going to be really serious with this analogy, then the question might be, well, what happens when a storm comes, or what happens when the water's crazy or the tide's crazy or something? And to that, I'd say you're right, and a stablecoin needs to take extra precautions to take these into account and maybe get the average sea level over the course of time. And most popular floating stablecoins have some mechanism to account for turbulence like that. Summary: pegged stablecoins are tied to that of another asset, while floating stablecoins use different mechanisms to keep the same buying power over time. Number 2, stability method. The stability method is this mechanism that keeps the coin stable. If it's a pegged stablecoin, what is the pegging mechanism? If it's a floating stablecoin, well, what is the floating mechanism? And it typically revolves around minting and burning the stablecoins in very specific ways, and usually refers to who or what is doing the minting and burning. These are on a spectrum of governed to algorithmic. In a governed stablecoin, there is a governing body or a centralized body that is minting and burning the stablecoins. You can imagine the maximally governed and least algorithmic coin would be a single person/entity minting new stablecoins, promising that the coins are not volatile. But it could also be an organization like a government, or even a DAO choosing to mint and burn new coins. These governed coins are typically considered centralized, since there's a singular body that is controlling the minting and burning. You can make them more decentralized by introducing a DAO, and that kind of makes them more algorithmic, but we'll get more into that later. Coins like USDC, USDT, and TUSD are examples of governed stablecoins. On the other hand, an algorithmic stablecoin is a stablecoin whose stability is maintained by a permissionless algorithm with no human intervention. And this is the third place where I disagree with traditional media. A coin like DAI I would consider much more algorithmic than governed because it uses a permissionless algorithm to mint and burn tokens. Whereas traditional media might say an algorithmic stablecoin is always under collateralized or follows seigniorage shares or something like that. But an algorithmic stablecoin is just when a set of autonomous code or algorithm dictates the minting and burning. There are zero meddling humans.
Would have been mine if it hadn't been to those meddling kids.
Examples of algorithmic stablecoins are going to be DAI, Frax, RAI, and yes, the $40 billion disaster, UST. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about classic UST and Luna. Now, a token can have algorithmic and governed properties in the same way that it can be somewhere in the middle of being floating and pegged. DAI, for example, does have an autonomous set of code that dictates the minting and burning, but it does also have a DAO where they can vote on different interest rates and what can be collateral types and different things like that. So technically, it is a hybrid system. It has some governance mechanisms and also some algorithmic ones. USDC would fall purely in the governed category because it's controlled by a centralized body. UST and Luna would fall almost purely in algorithmic. The Dirt Roads blog has some amazing takes on these pieces and a wonderful visualization of where on a spectrum of coins that are more algorithmic or governed. They use dumb as the opposite of algorithmic instead of governed, which probably isn't wrong. Most classically categorized fiat collateralized stablecoin almost all fall into the govern or dumb section since they are dealing with fiat currency and you need a centralized entity to onboard that fiat to the blockchain. You'll also notice on this chart, they have anchored versus reflexive on the x-axis. That's referring to how the collateral type affects the stablecoin, and collateral type is what we're going to cover next. So the summary here though is algorithmic stablecoins use some sort of autonomous permissionless code to mint and burn tokens, whereas a governed stablecoin have some human interaction that mints and burns the coins and keeps them stable. Now, before we go into our final category, let's look at this chart again. We could replace the word anchored with exogenous and reflexive with endogenous. And we'd have a chart that shows collateral type versus stability mechanism, which brings us to number 3, collateral type. Now, when we say collateral, we mean the stuff backing our stablecoins and giving it value. For example, USDC has the dollar as its collateral, and it's the dollar that gives the USDC token its value, because you hypothetically can swap one USDC for $1. DAI is collateralized by many assets. For example, you could deposit ETH and get minted DAI in return. And UST was, in a roundabout way, collateralized by Luna. Exogenous collateral is collateral that originates from outside the protocol, and endogenous collateral originates from inside the protocol. So one of the easier ways to define what type of collateral a protocol is using is to ask this question. If the stablecoin fails, does the underlying collateral also fail? If yes, it's endogenous. If no, it's exogenous. If USDC fails, the protocol, does the underlying collateral, the dollar, fail? No. So the protocol has exogenous collateral. If the USDC stablecoin fails, the dollar is going to keep being the dollar. If DAI, the stablecoin, fails, does the underlying collateral ETH also fail? No, so the DAI system is exogenous. The value of ETH isn't dependent on the value of DAI. If UST fails, does the underlying collateral Luna/Terra fail? Yes, absolutely. And this is exactly what happened that caused the system to lose $40 billion in what seemed like a day. Exogenous collateral originates from outside the protocol. Endogenous collateral originates from inside the protocol. Two other good tests that you can ask are, was the collateral created with the sole purpose of being collateral, or does the protocol own the issuance of the underlying collateral? If the answer is yes to either one of those, then it's endogenous collateral. Now, the traditional media usually says that algorithmic stablecoins are to blame, but I think what they're really referring to is endogenously collateralized stablecoins. It makes sense that they can be scary and potentially dangerous because their value kind of comes from nothing. Exogenously collateralized stablecoins are typically over-collateralized, meaning there's more value of collateral than there is of the stablecoins. Here we have another image from Dirt Roads comparing different stablecoins, the exogenous versus endogenous collateral of the protocols and how much they have. MakerDAO/DAI has almost all exogenous collateral. Frax, which is another stablecoin we haven't really spoken about too much, has a mix of exogenous and endogenous collateral. And the old Terra Luna and UST system had mainly endogenous collateral, which is how the system was able to crumble so quickly. So yeah, endogenously collateralized stablecoins don't have a great track record. So why would you want to make one? Well, the answer is scale. And oftentimes people also say capital efficiency. With exogenously collateralized stablecoins, the only way you can mint more stablecoins is by onboarding more collateral. You can only have a stablecoin market cap that is high or as high as that of the value of all your collateral. So if you want to have $68 billion in stablecoins, then that means you need to have $68 billion worth of collateral. And that's a lot of money that you would need to onboard to your system. If you have an endogenously collateralized stablecoin, you can have $0 worth of collateral, meaning it's much easier to become massive faster. Now, I agree with the Dirt Roads publication when they say that exogenously collateralized stablecoins can't scale. And I talk more about that in the blog associated with this video. So if you're interested, be sure to check that out after the rest of this video. But watch the rest of this video because we're just getting started. In the blog, we also talk more about seigniorage shares and shelling coin logic, which if you're interested in that stuff, definitely check it out. Most of these endogenous coins can be traced back to a paper written by a man named Robert Sams, where he talks about how to build an endogenously collateralized stablecoin using a seigniorage shares model, which again, I'm not going to go into, but I wanted to mention it because it's probably one of the most influential papers when it comes to these endogenously collateralized stablecoins. Endogenously collateralized stablecoins. There's a lot of words. Now, there's more information on the endogenous collateral debate in the blog, but let's do a thought experiment that I do think is compelling for endogenous collateralized stablecoins. Endogenously collateralized stablecoins. Imagine you have a currency and it's collateralized 100% by gold. And you run a bank and it's open 24/7 to allow people to exchange your generic coin for gold in your vaults. People love the convenience of our stablecoin instead of having to lug around their gold. So they treat our stablecoin as if it was gold because they know that at any time they can exchange it at the bank. This is an example of our generic coin being exogenously collateralized by gold, pegged to its price, and governed by us, by me, by our entity, since we own the issuance and burning of the coin. You come to our bank, we'll issue this coin, or we'll burn it once you redeem your gold. And since you can always exchange our coin for gold, our coin keeps its value. Now, let's say the bank is only open 5 days a week. Does our coin lose its value now that you can't always exchange it for gold? Well, probably not. The market probably won't even care. Now, let's say you need to close the bank for a week for renovations. Does our coin lose its value now? Well, let's say we close the bank for a month or a year or a decade. Forever? If we get to the point where you can never actually exchange our coin for gold or the underlying collateral again, maybe do people just use the coin as its currency backed by nothing? In a way, now it's moved from being exogenous to now being endogenous, since it's now backed by, well, itself. This is why Dirt Roads has reflexive on their chart. One of our coins is no longer equal to some amount of gold. It now equals one of itself. Okay, I know there's a lot here, and there's even more in the blog. So if some of this confused you, don't be discouraged. You can always come back. There's a ton of supporting documents and blogs and links that I personally watch to learn a lot of this as well. So be sure to use that if you get confused. But now let's look at some of the top stablecoins, what their properties are, and then we're gonna get to some really interesting stuff. We're not gonna go too deep into the architectures of these stablecoins. We are gonna go over DAI a little bit more though, because the DAI/MakerDAO system is a pretty standard model for what a stablecoin could look like. And it was one of the most influential stablecoins ever created, so there's that. And it's important that we go through these so we can understand what's currently out there and why they're currently out there. And then we can reveal why they're really out there. Why there's so many stablecoins. What are the incentives for people to mint them? And it may just blow your mind. So let's start with DAI. As we've mentioned before, DAI is a pegged, algorithmic, and exogenously collateralized stablecoin. It's one of the most influential DeFi projects ever created and was a huge factor in supercharging the DeFi space. Roughly, the way it works is you deposit ETH or some other crypto collateral into the smart contract that has this DAI algorithm code. And based off the current collateral to US dollar or ETH to US dollar price, it'll mint you some amount of DAI. You can only mint less DAI than the total value of collateral or ETH that you have. This way, the system always has more collateral than they'd have minted DAI. Additionally, every year or so, you'll get charged something called a stability fee, usually around like 2%. And now you're free to do whatever you want with your DAI. If you want to get your ETH back, you have to give your DAI back to the smart contract, which will then burn your DAI. It'll use the current price of ETH to figure out how much money it should give back to you. It's because of this stability fee and collateralized ETH that people often refer to this system as a collateralized debt position, since we technically owe DAI back to the protocol at some point. So yes, all the DAI that's in existence, somebody minted from the maker protocol and needs to pay it back at some point. If you can't pay your stability fees or the price of ETH tanks, and now the value of our collateral is less than the value of the DAI that we minted, people can liquidate us, which means they can take our collateral. Protocol always needs to have more collateral than minted DAI. So this is sort of your punishment for not keeping the collateral up, and a way to save the system from becoming under collateralized. And then there's also a maker token that's used to vote for stuff. Now, the reason I give this overview is I want your brain to be asking the question, hey, I get charged to mint a stablecoin? All the DAI in the world, somebody's being charged to have it out there? Someone could take my collateral if I don't monitor the balance? And most importantly, why would I spend money to mint this stablecoin? Why would I be the one to do that? Great question. That is the fundamental question, and we'll get to that. USDC. USDC is a classic pegged, governed, exogenously collateralized stablecoin. It's backed by real-world dollars in a bank account. Not much else to say here. UST and Luna. The classic old UST and Luna. We know it collapsed, but we can learn from what happened to hopefully prevent it in the future. UST was a stablecoin pegged to the dollar, algorithmic and endogenous, and it imploded on itself. Using what we know about stablecoins, can you guess why? Well, since the system was endogenous, once UST lost its peg, Luna became less attractive to hold. Since people weren't holding Luna, the price fell and it made it harder to keep the peg of UST, which made Luna's price fall, which makes UST harder to hold its peg, which makes, you see the pattern? People still want to try using these endogenously collateralized stablecoins because they do scale so quickly. So protocols like Frax have come a long way to do some type of hybrid between endogenous and exogenously collateralized stablecoin. RAI. RAI is one of the few floating stablecoins where it's not pegged to any other asset. It's focused on minimal governance, being floating, and using only Ethereum as their type of collateral with a nearly purely algorithmic stability mechanism. In a way, one could argue that because their collateral is only ETH, the price of RAI will always be somewhat pegged to the price of ETH, but that might be a longer argument. Due to these, it's floating, algorithmic, and exogenously collateralized. Now, they use some really cool supply and demand mechanisms to keep the price stable and non-volatile, but it's not really important how it works for the purpose of this video. So once again, I'm going to leave some links in the description if you want to learn more about RAI. The video on screen right now, I think, is particularly good at explaining exactly how it works and explaining why it's such a good stablecoin for normal average people to have. So now that we've gone over some stablecoins, we've gone over the categories, why we care, what is a stablecoin, let's talk about what they really do. We can start by asking the question, okay, which one of these is the best stablecoin? And to that, I need to ask, the best stablecoin for who? Centralized governed coins obviously have the issue of centrality, which sort of defeats the purpose of being in Web3. So maybe we want some flavors of algorithmic stablecoins. Maybe that's probably what we want for Web3. But these algorithmic coins might feel untested to non-crypto people, and the fees associated with them might be a little bit scary. For me personally, like I said, I really love the idea of RAI. The idea is to have stable buying power as opposed to being pegged to some other asset, and it's algorithmic in nature as opposed to being centralized. So it's a decentralized stablecoin. That's what we want. But every coin has their trade-offs, and I'd argue there is definitely no best coin right now. The stablecoin that's best for the average person might matter much less. It's the stablecoin that's best for rich whales might be what's more important here. Yes, the stablecoins the whales like might be what's more important. Now, for most algorithmic stablecoins, you'll see this. Some sort of fee associated with minting the coins. Protocols do make money off of these stablecoin systems, which I think is good. Sometimes they need money for maintenance, incentives for the stability of the coin, or money for improvements. So I do think these fees are good. And we need stablecoins for the three functions of money: storage of value, unit of account, and medium of exchange. But are you going to be the one to pay these fees to mint them and keep them in circulation? Someone has to pay to mint these coins and often keep paying. The market cap for some of these stablecoins is in the billions. If there is a 1% fee on these and the market cap is 1 billion, we're talking about $10 million. Are average people going to collectively pay $10 million a year to keep these in circulation? No. So average people aren't printing these for the three functions of money. Well, then who is minting these? So let's play a little thought experiment. Let's say I have ETH as an investment and I've bought up all the ETH. I've sold my house, I've sold everything I own, and I've used everything I have to buy Ethereum. But I want more. What can I do? I can put my ETH into one of these stablecoin protocols, get the minted stablecoin, and then sell the stablecoin for more ETH. You might have heard concepts like leveraged investing or margin trading, and this is essentially the Web3 equivalent. It's kind of funny. Why are stablecoins good? Well, because we need those three functions of money. But why are stablecoins minted? Well, because investors want to make leveraged bets. In fact, most stablecoin platforms have this as one of the biggest reasons to mint their stablecoin, to multiply exposure or to maximize your position on some crypto asset. Now, for sophisticated investors, this isn't new information at all. This is like investing 101. However, it does feel weird that we need stablecoins for the three functions of money, but that's not why they're minted. So even though I said I really like RAI as a stablecoin for the people, a reason DAI might be higher market cap is that investors like the leverage opportunity much more than they like the leverage opportunity that RAI offers. It could be something else, but that might be a big reason. How much stablecoins are minted are based off of how much investors think they can use that stablecoin to get more exposure to assets that they really want. So I know we've gone over a lot here, and the rabbit hole really doesn't end there. Curve.finance being one of the most important protocols for stablecoins is a really interesting story as well. My friend Garrett, who teaches about technology and finance, has a fantastic example as to why a stablecoin exchange might be so important.
You might wonder how a stablecoin exchange ever got off the ground. Is there really any demand out there to trade $1 for $1? Then I think back to my university days. One weekend, my laundry pile grew so disgusting, I was desperate to use the washing machine immediately. But the laundry machine took quarters, and I only had dollar bills. Quarters were in such short supply around the dorm room that I was willing to pay more than $1 for 4 quarters. In this urgent moment, I had specific utility in mind, and that changed my personal equation for this.
And Aave and Curve, both looking to launch their own stablecoin soon, is going to be really interesting as well. So we'll just have to see how these unfold. I do think, though, that we are going to get better and better at creating these stablecoins because we do need them. They are important. And for you developers watching who want to build one of these, we have some minimal stablecoin contract examples in our DeFi minimal repo, link in the description. So if you're looking to tackle this problem, definitely be sure to get started there. I'm really excited for the future of DeFi and for the future of stablecoins, as I think they are a wildly important primitive for DeFi. And I know that this was a long video, but I hope you all learned something, and I hope this gives you a better idea of what stablecoins really are and how they're created. If you learned something, leave a comment in the comment section. If you didn't learn something, leave a comment in the comment section. Or if I got something wrong, leave a comment there. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.